Hello everyone, I wish you peace and happiness. Are you all healthy? Today, I will continue to share with you the difficult, impoverished and struggling days of Huyen and her mother to make a living. Huyen and Micah sat resting under the tree in front of the house. After a while, Huyen gently stood up, took Micah and Apos' small hand and said, "Come on, let and Apos' go home, my dear." Micah obediently stood up and followed her mother. But after taking a few steps, a sudden dizziness struck. Huyen saw her vision blur, her mind spinning, and her body swaying. She quickly turned back, leaning on the tree to avoid falling. Seeing this, the homeowner who was inside immediately ran out quickly. "Are you okay?" he asked as he caught Huyen and Apos' arm. Huyen gasped for breath, her face turning pale, and softly said, "I and Apos am just a little dizzy." The homeowner helped Huyen sit down, then looked at Micah standing beside her, worriedly saying, "Both of you go inside and rest for a while, Don and Apos. Try to walk now." Huyen nodded, holding Micah and Apos' hand. With the homeowner and Apos' support, mother and daughter slowly entered the house to rest. Early in the morning, Huyen took Micah and Apos' hand as they crossed the hills and winding mountain roads to find a custard apple garden. After a long walk, mother and daughter finally arrived. In front of them were lush rows of custard apples, heavy with fruit on the branches. Huyen approached the garden owner politely and asked, "Ma and Apos, do you sell custard apples?" The owner happily nodded and "Yes, of course. If you want to buy, just go ahead and choose." Huyen smiled and thanked her, then spread out the cloth she brought on the ground and gently sat Micah on it to rest. She took a water bottle from her woven basket and gave it to her child, saying, "Drink some water, you and Apos. You've probably gotten tired from the long journey." Micah took the bottle and obediently sipped each time. Huyen also took a sip from her own bottle, and then told Micah to sit quietly here without running around so she could go pick custard apples. Huyen carried the bamboo basket in her hand and stepped into the star apple garden. The lush green leaves stretched out, and each star apple was plump, nestled among the branches. The garden owner walked ahead, reaching out to pick a perfectly ripe star apple and handed it to Huyen. "Just choose these kinds of fruits, big, open-eyed, uniform, and just right," she said. Huyen looked closely at the star apple, then nodded, "Yes, I understand." Huyen politely borrowed the garden owner and Apos' scissors. Holding the scissors, she began to walk along each row of trees, carefully inspecting each star apple. When she saw a large, beautiful, and ripe fruit, Huyen gently cut the stem with the scissors and placed it into the bamboo basket. The garden owner held a few freshly picked custard apples in her hands, then approached and handed them to Huyen to put into the bamboo basket. Huyen happily accepted and gently arranged each custard apple into the basket. Afterwards, she continued walking along the rows of trees, carefully observing and using scissors to cut the ripe custard apples. Suddenly, Huyen saw a ripe custard apple with a light green shell and evenly stretched eyes. She joyfully held the custard apple in her hand and quickly walked toward Micah. Huyen sat down beside her, gently peeled off the shell, separated the soft white segments, and handed them to Micah. "Eat this, remember to remove the seeds." Micah happily accepted it, eating and smiling with delight. Watching her daughter eat happily, Huyen also smiled, feeling warmer in her heart amidst the morning in the custard apple garden. Huyen returned to the custard apple garden, continued carrying the bamboo basket along the rows of trees, and carefully cut the ripe custard apples. While engrossed in her work, she suddenly heard Micah calling out, "Mommy, I want to eat more custard apples." Huyen turned her head to look outside the garden, smiled and replied, "Wait for me a little, I'm finding more ripe ones for you." Then Huyen continued walking deeper into the garden, patiently searching among the leaves. After a while, she saw a perfectly ripe custard apple. Huyen happily reached out to pick it, ran over to Micah with the fruit, sat down beside her, gently peeled the shell and offered it to Micah to eat. Micah happily accepted and ate eagerly. Huyen gently pinched her cheeks on both sides, making Micah giggle. Seeing her daughter and Appo's innocent smile, Huyen also smiled. The mother and daughter sat together, joyfully enjoying the peaceful moments in the lush custard apple garden. Huyen continued to carry the scissors into the garden, patiently cutting each custard apple. After finishing one row of trees, she moved on to another, always carefully searching for large, beautiful, and perfectly ripe custard apples. As time passed, the bamboo basket in her hands finally filled with lush green custard apples. Huyen used both hands to carry the heavy bamboo basket to the garden owner sitting nearby. She placed the basket down and began arranging the custard apples neatly on the grass. Then Huyen carefully packed each fruit into plastic baskets. When the baskets were full, the garden owner placed them on the scale, weighing each one in turn. Huyen stood beside her, attentively watching, waiting for the garden owner to calculate the total number of custard apples harvested by the mother and daughter. Huyen carefully arranged each custard apple into the bamboo basket, trying to organize them neatly so they wouldn't get crushed when brought home. Once finished, she took out the money to pay the garden owner and politely thanked her. The mother and daughter both turned to greet the owner. End quote. Hello, Ma and Appos. Thank you very much. End quote. The garden owner smiled and waved goodbye to the mother and daughter. Huyen gently lifted the bamboo basket full of custard apples onto her shoulder. Although the basket was quite heavy, she still tried to walk steadily. One hand kept the basket on her shoulder, while the other held Micah and Appos' small hand. The mother and daughter slowly left the garden, walking along the small path between the hills. Behind them, the lush custard apple garden gradually disappeared into the distance, while Huyen and Micah continued their journey home with the bamboo basket full of freshly harvested custard apples. After walking a certain distance, Micah started to feel tired, her steps slowing down. She looked up and said to her mother, end quote, "Mom, my legs are so tired." End quote. Huyen looked at her child with affection and bent down to carry Micah. On her shoulder, she still carried the heavy bamboo basket full of custard apples, holding Micah tightly in her arms. Despite the long journey and the heavy basket, Huyen continued to walk step by step, only hoping her daughter could rest. Soon Micah lay peacefully in her mother and Appos' arms and fell asleep without her knowing. Huyen walked along, glancing down at her sleeping child, and she gently smiled. When they reached the town, Huyen saw a house with a large tree providing shade. She gently carried Micah under the tree and sat down to rest. Huyen took off her hat and slowly fanned Micah, who was sleeping soundly. The heavy bamboo basket full of custard apples was still on her shoulder, while Huyen sat quietly under the shade, taking a moment to rest after the long journey. The landlord is sitting and drinking water on a stone table and chairs in front of the house, watching Huyen and Micah resting under a tree. After a short rest, Huyen gently calls her child, end quote, "Micah, wake up, let an Appos' go home." End quote. Micah rubs her eyes and slowly wakes up. Huyen gently places her down on the ground and prepares to stand up. But as she releases her hand, the bamboo basket full of custard apples on her back suddenly wobbles. Huyen quickly reaches out to hold the basket, trying to adjust it so that the custard apples inside do not fall out. She carefully lifts the basket onto her shoulder and takes Micah and Appos' hand, intending to walk away. However, just as she straightens up, a sudden headache and dizziness strike. Huyen and Appos' vision blurs, her body sways and her face turns pale. She quickly puts her hand against the tree trunk to keep her balance, trying to stand steadily. The homeowner sitting not far away immediately noticed Huyen and Appos' unusual appearance. He quickly stood up, ran over to the tree, and reached out to support Huyen. End quote, "What in Appos' wrong? Are you very tired?" End quote. Huyen, exhausted, still supported herself on the tree trunk and nodded gently. Seeing her pale face, the homeowner became even more worried and softly said, end quote, "Don and Appos', try to go any further. Come here and sit down for a while to rest." Then he carefully helped Huyen step towards the stone table and chairs in front of the house. Huyen slowly followed. Micah also obediently stayed close to her mother. When they arrived, he helped Huyen sit down and said, "Just sit and rest, and when you and Appos feeling better, you can continue." Huyen leaned back on the chair, breathing slowly again. Micah stood beside her, holding her mother and Appos' hand with a worried look. The landlord poured a glass of water and gently handed it to Huyen, "Drink some water to feel better." Huyen took it with her hand, sipped small amounts, and then placed the glass on the table. The dizziness still made her exhausted, so Huyen leaned back on the stone bench, closing her eyes to rest. Micah sat beside her, quietly watching her mother. Seeing the woven basket full of custard apples still under the tree, the landlord stepped outside. He bent down, using both hands to lift the heavy basket, and slowly carried it into the front yard to help Huyen. Placing the basket next to the table and chairs, he looked at Huyen and said, "Just rest, I and Appos. I'll help carry the custard apples inside." Huyen nodded softly, lying on the bench, feeling relieved that someone was helping her when she was tired. The landlord sat down beside Huyen, gently fanning her with a hat. After a while, seeing that Huyen and Appos' complexion had improved, he asked about her condition and then let her continue resting. After resting for a bit, Huyen supported herself on the chair and slowly stood up, intending to go home with Micah and the basket of na. But as soon as she stood up, her body suddenly swayed, and her steps became unsteady. The landlord immediately reached out to support Huyen and helped her sit down on the chair. "Please sit down and rest first. Let me take you home." Saying that, the landlord stood up, went to the parking area, and brought his motorcycle to help the mother and daughter go home. Huyen quickly spoke up, "No need, I can go by myself. Sorry to trouble you." The landlord turned back to look at Huyen, seeing that she was still tired and feeling uneasy. Huyen sat on the chair, holding Micah and Appos' hand with one hand, trying to reassure him that she could walk on her own. "It and Appos' okay, just let me take you home." Saying that, the host carefully placed the woven basket full of custard apples on the front of the motorbike. Then he turned back to help Huyen to the bike. Seeing that Micah was still small, he gently lifted the girl onto the bike and helped Huyen sit behind. Once the mother and daughter were seated securely, the host got on the bike, started the engine. The bike gradually moved, taking the three of them away from the house and back to Huyen and Appos' home. Huyen sat behind, holding Micah with one hand and pointing the way with the other to the host. "Go straight here, then turn left at the intersection. After that, just go a little further and you and Appos' I'll reach my house." The host nodded and carefully rode in the direction Huyen indicated. On the way home, Huyen still felt a bit tired but was relieved inside because she had someone to help. Micah sat obediently beside her mother, and the woven basket full of custard apples was placed in front of the bike, accompanying the three of them back home. The motorcycle stopped in front of Huyen and Appos' house gate. Huyen slowly got off the bike and took Micah and Appos' hand to walk in first. The homeowner carried a basket full of custard apples and followed behind. Seeing that Huyen was still tired, he quickly came to support her. As soon as they entered the house, he carefully placed the basket of custard apples on the bamboo table. Huyen looked back at him and gently said, "Please sit at the table and rest for a while. My house is a bit messy, I hope you understand." The homeowner smiled, pulled out a bamboo chair and sat down. Huyen led Micah to sit beside her, then also sat down to rest. The small, simple house was not yet neatly arranged, but the atmosphere became warm when someone visited and helped the mother and child. The landlord sat down at the bamboo table, glancing around the small bamboo house. Seeing that there was still no electricity in the house, he Huyen and Appos' T helped but feel concerned and asked, end quote, you and your mother live here but there and Oppos. Still no electricity? That and Oppos. So hard. End quote. Huyen nodded softly and replied in a whisper. End quote. Yes, my mother and I have only been here for 2 months. I haven't and Oppos. T had a chance to get the electricity connected yet. End quote. Seeing the mother and daughter living in a simple, impoverished condition, the landlord was silent for a moment, then took out a 500,000 VND bill from his wallet and gently handed it to Micah. End quote. This is for your milk. End quote. Huyen quickly shook her head and reached out to stop him. End quote. Thank you very much for helping us get home, but without you I don't and Oppos. T know when my mother and I will get back. I can and Oppos. T accept this money. End quote. The landlord looked at Huyen, but seeing her insistence not to accept it, he didn't and Oppos. T push. He put the money into his pocket, stood up and said goodbye to the mother and daughter. End quote. All right, take care and rest well. I and Oppos am leaving now. End quote. Huyen and Micah stood up to see him off at the door. Huyen returned to the bamboo table, intending to tidy up the belongings when she suddenly saw a wallet placed on the table. She picked it up to check and immediately thought, end quote, he must have forgotten it. End quote. Without hesitation, Huyen quickly stepped out to the porch, looked in the direction where the homeowner was walking and called out loudly, end quote, sir, please wait a moment, I need to ask you something. End quote. The homeowner, who had just reached the gate, turned back upon hearing Huyen and Oppos' call. He hurried into the house, looking at Huyen with curiosity. Huyen held out the wallet in front of him and asked, end quote, is this yours? I saw you leave it on the table. End quote. The homeowner took the wallet, opened it to look, then nodded. End quote. Yes, that and Oppos' right. Thank you. Lucky I noticed. End quote. Huyen smiled gently and replied, end quote, you and Oppos, re-welcome. End quote. The homeowner put the wallet into his pocket, bid farewell to the mother and daughter, and left the house. Huyen stood on the porch watching until he left, then returned to the bamboo table. Hearing Micah crying out hungry, Huyen turned and said, end quote, Micah, go get the pack of noodles. I will go to the garden to get some firewood. End quote. Micah obediently ran to get the noodles. Huyen stepped into the garden, gathered a bundle of firewood, and slowly returned to the house. The headache still hadn't an Oppos. Gone away, making her steps heavy and her body tired. Huyen carried the bundle of firewood to the stove, sat down, and started a fire. Soon the flames flared up and smoke billowed, making the small kitchen foggy. Huyen stood up and went to the water jar, scooped some water into a pot, and placed it on the stove. Seeing that her mother was still tired, Micah worriedly ran over and said, end quote, let me cook, Mom. Rest. End quote. Huyen looked at her daughter, smiled softly, and nodded. Micah sat down beside the stove, attentively watching the pot of water. Occasionally, when she saw the fire dying down, she added another piece of firewood to the stove. Huyen sat nearby to rest, watching her little daughter try to help her, feeling both tender and warm inside. The water in the pot started to boil. Huyen gently unwrapped the instant noodles and dropped them into the pot, stirring with chopsticks. When the noodles were cooked, she took the pot off the heat, carefully scooped the noodles into a large bowl, and placed it on the bamboo table. Mother and daughter sat down together beside the small table. Micah picked up her chopsticks, grabbed some noodles, and then filled a bowl to give to her mother. End quote. Mom, please eat. End quote. Then Micah filled a small bowl for herself and sat down to eat. Seeing that her mother was still tired, the girl stood up, went inside the house, poured a glass of water, and brought it out to Huyen. End quote. Mom, drink some water. End quote. Huyen took the glass from her child in Oppos' hand and smiled softly. End quote. Yes, thank you, my dear. End quote. Mother and daughter sat by the bamboo table enjoying a simple meal of noodles and caring for each other. The small house had no electricity, only natural light from outside. But that moment was still very warm and peaceful. Because she saw that her mother was still tired. Today, after finishing eating, Micah proactively took the bowls and dishes to wash. Huyen sat beside the bamboo table, took headache medicine, and gently massaged her forehead. She only hoped that the pain would ease soon so that she and her mother could go to the market to sell the custard apples. The harvested custard apples could spoil if left until the next day. After washing the dishes, Micah placed them in the dish rack and neatly covered them. Then she poured a glass of water and brought it to her mother. End quote. Drink some water and rest. End quote. Huyen took the glass, nodded softly, and slowly stepped into the bamboo bed. The mother and daughter lay down to rest. Huyen closed her eyes, only hoping that when she woke up, her headache would be gone so they could take the custard apples to the market. Micah also gently climbed into the bed, lying close to her mother. The small house gradually became quiet. The mother and daughter quickly fell asleep, taking a rest to regain strength for the upcoming market. End quote, Mom. End quote, Micah and Appo's call startled Huyen and woke her up. She quickly sat up, rubbed her forehead, and then hurried out to the porch. Seeing Micah waiting, Huyen sighed softly. End quote. Mom is so tired that I fell asleep. Luckily you called me to wake up. End quote. Huyen looked outside and saw that quite some time had passed, so she quickly said, end quote, Micah, hurry up, let and Appo's go to the market with Mom or it will be dark. It and Appo's already late. End quote. Micah obediently nodded. Huyen turned back, tidied up a little, and then closed the door. She carefully lifted the bamboo basket full of na and put it on her shoulder, still a bit tired but trying to walk. Huyen reached out and took Micah and Appo's small hand. Mother and daughter left the house together, rushing along the road to the market. The bamboo basket full of na was heavy on Huyen and Appo's shoulder, while Micah walked close beside her. Both of them just hoped to reach the market quickly to sell all the na before it got dark. As soon as she arrived at the market, Huyen found an empty spot and gently placed her woven basket full of custard apples on the ground. She spread out a cloth on the market floor, carefully took each custard apple from the basket, and neatly arranged them in rows for customers to see. Seeing Micah standing nearby, exhausted, Huyen picked up her child and sat her on her lap. She took off her hat, gently fanned Micah, and then peeled a custard apple, revealing its soft white segments. She offered them to her child, saying, end quote, Micah, eat this, end quote. Micah happily accepted, sitting obediently in her mother and Appo's lap and eating each segment of the custard apple. While holding her child and fanning her, Huyen occasionally looked at the neatly arranged custard apples in front of her, hoping that today she and her daughter would sell everything to earn more money to cover their living expenses. Customers take turns visiting Huyen and Appo's custard apple stall. Some stop to ask the price, while others bend down to examine each neatly arranged custard apple on the mat. After asking the price, they sit down, carefully selecting the large, beautiful, and perfectly ripe fruits. Each time a customer finishes choosing, Huyen gently takes the number of custard apples and places them on the scale. She carefully weighs each portion and announces the total amount to the customer. The customer hands her the money, and she happily accepts it, then expresses her gratitude. Micah sits quietly beside her, watching her mother sell the fruit. The basket of custard apples gradually empties, and the amount of money Huyen earns slowly increases. Watching the custard apples being bought one after another, Huyen feels relieved and happy because the effort of her and her daughter from early morning has finally paid off. The last customers finally came one after another to buy the custard apples. Huyen carefully weighed each portion, received the money, and happily thanked the customers. Soon, most of the custard apples on the mat had been sold, leaving only a few remaining. Huyen looked at the remaining custard apples and smiled, deciding not to sell anymore and to save them for Micah to take home and eat. She gently placed the remaining custard apples into a bamboo basket, then gathered the mat and stored it away. Huyen slung the bamboo basket over her shoulder, took Micah and Appo's hand and said, end quote, "Let an Appo's go home, dear. Today we sold a lot of custard apples." End quote. Micah happily held her mother and Appo's hand. The mother and daughter left the market together, walking slowly along the road back home as the evening began to fall. The bamboo basket was no longer as heavy as in the morning, but it still contained a few sweet custard apples for Micah. The mother and daughter walked and talked, carrying the simple joy after a tiring day. If everyone loves Huyen and Micah and Appo's mother and child, please subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications, and leave a word of encouragement for the two of them to see the next developments. Every follow and every loving comment from everyone will be a source of comfort and strength to help Huyen get through difficult times. Thank you all very much.